Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Carm Capri out of the Town Hall Academy. We've been doing this now 238 straight weeks. What a gift to the automotive aftermarket, and it wouldn't be possible without our partner sponsors, but we'll cover that in a minute. Hey, I'm the pioneer of automotive aftermarket podcasts and stories and episodes and webinars like this. So glad to have you here. I have a hell of a panel and probably one of the toughest, most difficult topics that we could cover. And we're talking about addiction. But we're coming to you live from the Remarkable Results Radio Podcast Studio. Be a fly on the wall and just hang out and listen. I guarantee you'll learn something. Hey, I've got a great panel today. They've been hand selected, without a doubt. Would love to tell you who's with me. Brian Holthe from Genesis Automotive and RV, Tacoma, Washington. He's also the Pierce County ASA chapter president. Hey, Brian, welcome.
Thank you.
Good to have you here. Yeah, I'm glad you're here. By the way, everyone's been on the show before. Also with us is Matt Fonslow, shop manager, diagnostician at Riverside Automotive, Red Wing, Minnesota.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Matt has the wonderful distinction of being on the podcast more than anyone else. And I always appreciate what he brings, and he's here for an important reason. And also David Wagner, mobile diagnostician. Hello, David.
Hey, how you doing today, Carm?
Out of the Philadelphia area, and you're just starting your mobile diagnostic company, right?
Yeah, I started part-time about a month ago. My full-time boss of about 15 years was really good working with me in my transition. And in about 2 weeks, it looks like I'll be going full-time mobile.
Well, good for you. Happy for you. Sounds like a great evolution. If you're with us at all on social media, do me a favor, give us a like, a comment, a share, check in with your city. And if you've got any questions or comments, we'd love to have them. And as you all know, that we could put them up here in the studio. As I was saying earlier, the industry's first consistent single subject forum. It's been likened to a 40-minute 20 group. Hey, I want to pay homage to our great partner, Shopware. Here's something to think about. How often do your advisors play phone tag? Every ring, every voicemail, it's time ticking on a stalled job. Shopware's digital communication is really as easy as the customer just clicks yes. Find out more at getshopware.com. Hey, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and thanks. It's amazing how 238 weeks in a row, I keep coming up with these great topics. So many people are always so excited to join the show and share their wisdom. Next week, this is going to be an interesting, if you will, throw it up in the air and see what happens. We're going to do an aftermarket roundtable, join the talk of the day. I know that they'll each bring one or two things that are either something crawling at them, or something that they want us all to pay attention to, and that's next week. By the way, we did an episode 102 from January 19th. Matt was on that show. Second chance working with and supporting addiction. It will be, I hope, a perfect bookend to this show. Well, guys, thank you so much for investing and spending your time. An important topic. I do believe this is going to get a lot of airplay once we get this thing published, repurposed next Thursday. Here's what I hope to cover, everyone. What does it take to be sober? What to look for in a team member? How can we help? Most important thing is, how can we help? How to support an addict willing to get sober? How much till they affect the business? What does it take to admit that you need help? And from Matt communicated with me this week, and he said Carm overdose deaths are up 30% in 2020, almost 100,000, mostly opioids. And we can't help but see stuff online, see things on the World Wide Web, and hear things on social media. But many of it, with that kind of number, Matt, we've people know people that this has happened to. It's a tough thing. So,
yeah, I think the last episode we talked about maybe 1 in 3, but I'm pretty sure it's 100%. 100% of everybody knows somebody.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being here. I'd love to open the show with both Brian and David talking about talk about being honest and candid and open. Both these guys are recovering addicts. I mean, they're happy to say we're sober, and that's why they're here. And I want you to listen with your heart and listen with your mind. And I'd like to find out, Brian, how'd you get where you are today?
Well, thanks, Carm. You know, my story started back when I was 14. Started drinking beer, thought it was fun. Became in my 20s, I got introduced to cocaine, then IV drug use, spiraled into just about anything. I not only liked the drugs, I fell in love with the needle. So that's kind of one of the things, at least, that happened to me. Then in my early 30s, I had a change of heart. I had some things happen in my life. Number one, my mom, one Christmas Eve, said, "I don't know who you are. I don't know what you've done with my son, but I no longer want to talk to you. And or you're no longer welcome in my life." And that hit home for me. And it wasn't just, anger. It was just plain, "I don't know what's happened. I don't want to talk to you." So that's kind of what started my story, or started me on the road. It took me from that was December 24th and 1991, and January 1st, 1992, I did my last hit of dope, and been clean and sober since.
But you got some help along the way.
Absolutely. I from asking for my job back and having one person step into my life and trusting me, and he helped me get back on my feet. In fact, he's the one that rented me my first building, helped me build my credit. I mean, he was a godsend, just absolute godsend. To coworkers that used to roll up my sleeves and just to make sure I hadn't done any drugs the night before. And so it was a matter of me being open about it and asking for the help.
I hear this over and over again, that there was always that one person that made a difference to climb up and climb out of addiction. And if we're going to learn anything in this episode, I think, Brian, you may have set the tone, and the tone would be, there were people with me that I was working with that cared so much that I didn't relapse. And we can sit in a business environment and see and know that someone has a problem, but if they're willing to help themselves, I guess your message is, you have to be willing to help them.
Absolutely. And for the person that helped me, his name is Mo. I had taken a car apart, newer BMW transmission was apart on the workbench, and then I disappeared. He ended up having to buy that car from the customer to save face. And, when I went to him and asked for help, he stood at his counter and actually leaned up against the wall and said, "How can a guy like me help a guy like you?" And, I just said, "I need a friend that's clean and sober. You're the only one I know in this state. And I just need some help." And that's what started it.
Thank you for setting this up, Brian. I appreciate it. I'm sure it may not be difficult to talk about it. Is it difficult to talk about?
I think that I like to share my story because it gives hope to family members, to others. I have the conversation. Many of my customers, especially when I was on the front counter all the time, many of my customers know my story, and many of my old time customers still do. It's been a long time, but I've actually had customers come to me and say, "I have a grandson or a son or a nephew, and I'm trying to help. What can you give me to help?" Okay. And so I do my best.
Well, good for you. David?
Can I ask the hard question?
Oh yeah, please.
please, if you don't mind. Brian, did you and your mom reconnect?
Absolutely. I held her
Awesome.
hand when she passed away
I'm
in
so happy for you.
2016, and we had we had a better relationship from that point on.
Thanks, Matt. Good question. Thank you, Brian. David?
So for me, I got to be straight up honest. I still, like, recently in the last couple of years, I did start having a beer or two once in a while, sometimes a glass of wine. So, um, I have a little trouble saying that I'm 100% sober, because I do, enjoy a beer once in a while. So, and I do know that's very hypocritical. Um, but as far as how everything started for me, I grew up in a house that, beer never was a big deal. You know what I mean? I probably had my first beer when I was about 5 years old, and it was really no big thing. Um, Everybody in my house, drank beer. Nobody ever got stupid drunk or violent or anything like that. So it was always pretty much under control until I hit my 20s, when I started experimenting with like cocaine and crystal meth, stuff like that. And then it was weird. It kind of almost seemed like a challenge, could I get more drunk than I did high? And it was just really, I don't know, really stupid, but it got a hold of my life. And it got to the point where, I was stealing and just doing things. And I guess the turning point for me was I was at a pool tournament one day. It was a Saturday morning, and we lost the tournament, but I came home probably about 11 o'clock, and that's how early we lost the tournament. And I was so wasted, at this tournament. My wife, and it was a Father's Day. It was Father's Day too. So that was kind of like the big heartbreaker about it. Um, my wife was really mad at me. And she called my mom. She called my mom. My mom came over. She took the kids and left. I think she went to her sister's house for the weekend. But my mom comes in, and I was kind of with it. And she told me, she's like, if you don't get your act together, your kids are gonna call somebody else daddy someday. And it really broke my heart. And I knew at that point I needed to do something. And from that point on, I worked really hard to try to stay sober and stuff, but I couldn't do it myself, and like Brian said, you got to surround yourself with good people. You know what I mean? Have somebody you can lean against who, um, just isn't going to steer you in the wrong direction, and be supportive. It's, you need that in your life, so.
So here's the question, guys. This team, Matt, absolutely. Thank you for being here and chiming in anytime. If we know someone who is a team member and we know that they have a problem, guys, can we help, or do they have to realize on their very own that they have to start the sober journey?
I think that's kind of a tough question. It depends on the person. Depends on the sober techs or owners, their relationship with them, whether or not the subject can be broached in a fashion that's a safe place. But it really comes down to, from what I've seen, the people that I've seen that do get clean and sober, the friends that I've been in the program with, that I've watched go in and out the door, it's a matter of heart, whether you really want it, and then what are you going to do to maintain it? Those people, an employer, a coworker, they can only be there to support you, but you have to do the work. You have to realize your danger signs. You have to be willing to act on those. In my early sobriety, I would get myself, I would sense something's going on, and I would call my pastor, I would call Mo, I would call certain people and say, hey, I need you to hold me accountable. And from that, I'd get phone calls at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, wake me out of a sleep. What are you doing right now? I was just thinking about you. Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? And so, once you find the power to do that, once the addict finds the power to do that and they realize people care, it adds to the incentive to continue to do well.
Not to keep linking this back to the previous episode on this, but we talked about the human part, the bonding part, and having people there that care about you and you care about. And yeah, the substance abuse, the person with the substance abuse disorder, they have to make the decision, right? They have to be done with it, but then not be behind the eight ball. So like Brian's story, it sounds like he could have been behind the eight ball, meaning I'm done. I'm ready to rebuild my life and deal with this substance abuse issue and whatever led to that, coping mechanism, stuff like that, doesn't matter. He lucked out and had somebody there that could help him, like he said, get a place to live. There's a lot of people out there, maybe like in David's case, that maybe they got caught doing something illegal to try to feed the addiction, and now options are limited. Where am I going to get a place to stay? Are they going to let somebody rent an apartment with a record? Probably not. Where are you staying? And it kind of keeps pushing you down. And I'm not trying to say like we just open up the floodgates and look the other way all the time, but you can see how you can start this really vicious cycle of, I want to get better. I'm working, I'm doing these things to get better, and yet I get pushed down, pushed down, pushed down. Well, why wouldn't they finally give up? Right? Why wouldn't they finally go back to the coping mechanism again?
I think you're right, Matt. You got to give these people a chance to do better in their life so they can feel better, and realize that they have purpose, So, I left the guy I'm working for now. I left him for a few years to get to try. At that point, I got sober somewhere in the middle of that 3 years, and after I guess he realized I was sober, he tried to get me back to the shop, and he did, and it's really been a great relationship ever since. And if it wasn't for him bringing me back, I don't think I would be anywhere close to the opportunities or be in the position that I'm in now, to make life better for my family and myself, so, it's big, that he trusts me. And, I can't thank him enough, you know what I mean? For just giving me the opportunity to come back and work for him, and, always being there, and checking on me once in a while and stuff, but, yeah, man, I think you're 100% right. It's a good feeling to feel like you're part of something,
Absolutely.
With that said, David, do we distance ourselves from the addict, a coworker?
I don't think so. I mean, for me, like I had a really good friend that would always, he'd want to know what I was doing and stuff like that. I mean, he's the one that talked me into stop shooting pool just to keep me out of the bars, because he saw how hard it was to be in the bars at the time. So when I first got sober, I stopped drinking also for I'd say about 8 years, and, so he's the one that saw, like, I would look at the bar and I would just start sweating and stuff. And he's like, you know what, dude, why don't you stop shooting pool and just get away from everything for a long time?
So basically, you had a guardian angel keeping an eye on you. But my question, Matt, I saw your head shake when I said, do we distance ourselves from addict because we don't want to get involved?
Yeah, I think I misunderstood. So
Okay.
what I've seen is people distance themselves. I'm not saying they should. That's just what they do. And it's a little bit of that tribalism type thing. And, and then hearing what David's saying too, what pops into my mind. And it's regardless, it's not just an addiction thing, it's anything. A lot of times there are hands out there to help, right? It doesn't matter if you're struggling with a substance abuse, doesn't matter if it's just depression, like mental health. A lot of times there's hands out there, you just don't see them. And so these guys, there's hands out there. I don't know how many for sure, the ones, and they had the ability to see them and then use them. Sometimes I don't know if it's good terminology to say checking their ego, but being able to accept the help, that's a big thing, guys. Like that, I don't know if you can credit yourselves enough for that, and you deserve a lot of accolade for that, to be able to accept the help. It's so important. I don't know if I can phrase it properly.
It's part of the culture. It's kind of hard for men to ask for help, and so I can speak from my perspective, but it's rewarding too when you can ask for that help and that person acknowledges that you're asking and doesn't make you feel belittled for that, asking for that help. Because at that point, if you're an employer and somebody comes to you and asks you for help, if you turn your back on them, they're likely, you may be the only person they're reaching to. They may be too ashamed to reach to a family member. It's asking for that help is the first step, because obviously by that point you've already made a decision that you have a problem. And, they say that's the first step. You got to realize you've got a problem. And we can't always do this by ourselves. And that's why there's there's programs to help us.
Matt, is it good to talk amongst people like we are with people that have gotten sober? I mean, can we encourage people that have an addiction? Please listen to this podcast, or I know someone who'd be really great to talk to.
I mean, for multiple reasons. One is, just like anything, it humanizes people. So again, that tribalism, we have stigmas of addicts or people with substance use disorders or mental health. We like to put people in boxes. We like to categorize them. That's what we do. It's in our DNA. It's that tribalism. But when you talk to people, or we listen to these conversations, and I listen to David's story, and I listen to Brian's story, and I listen to, if you have a story, whether you're directly involved or not, it humanizes people. It humanizes them, and it makes those problems less untouchable, or I don't understand them because I haven't seen it, or I don't associate it with a person. And this type of stuff, that's exactly what it does. And you understand then that these are real people. They're good people that have a problem, be it a disease or a learned behavior. I don't think we have to get into that discussion, but something's going on, just like, any other issue, like a disease or whatever. You don't change your opinion of somebody because they have cancer. Right? You want to help, you want to be there for them. And that's what these kind of conversations help with. And then the other thing I don't want to forget about is the success stories. Sometimes that's help. Like David did it, Brian did it. Last episode, Eric did it. Ron.
Yep.
Rob. He did it.
Rob, Eric. Yeah.
I mean, that I can do it. Maybe I can do it. And maybe I reach out to these people, or I reach out to you. What are some pathways to help? I'm ready.
Wonderful. Hey, let me wrestle this from you guys for a minute. We'll be right back. We'll do segment B. We'd like to talk about my partner Shopware here a minute. Let's face it, technicians are your inventory of time, and it's the only inventory that expires every minute of every day. Maximize sales and speed to get the cars moving through your business a whole lot faster. Learn more at getshopware.com. Wow, guys, I'm my heart's pumping heavy and fast for your honesty, your transparency here. Let's talk about ownership. Let's let peers and owners. Are we open and transparent enough that our people would confide in us? If you've got a quality technician who has a problem, quality service advisor that has a problem, Brian, do you feel all kinds of responsibility on your very own, even though you're in recovery? If someone doesn't have that experience, do you know people in your group that say, I'm willing to help every minute of every day?
Well, there are a lot of people that are willing to help if they're given the opportunity and they understand what's going on. I can say that in the past year, I've had 2 technicians. I hired one guy in December of last year, and we realized he had a problem. And, I sat him down, explained my story. I said, hey, if you need help, I'm here. I'd like to see you. You're a good tech. And he didn't choose to do anything. He just chose to move on. And then I had one recently that I've had the same talk with. He's been here for over a year, and his was mainly alcohol, and he would call in, not show up, and it was becoming a burden. And I don't know what happened, but just all of a sudden it clicked, and he came in and said, "Hey, I'm going to be gone for a month. I'm doing a program," and now he's back, doing great. Attitude's changed. Hasn't talked to me a lot about it, but obviously, he's done what he needed to do for himself. So giving him that safe space to be able to leave his job, that was one of his questions. If I go for a month, is my job going to be here when I get back? And, we were so ready to let him go, just so ready. And I mean, literally it was, how can I terminate this guy? To the point where of course, we're going to give you your job back. We want you to have that safety net and go take care of yourself. And so it's worked well for him.
But you've been there and done that. So you know how important that is. We have a lot of people listening that are not in recovery. Never happened to them. The message we're trying to get out is how critically important it is for them to have someone willing to say, yes, your job is safe. Yes, we'll help you, and have it be genuine.
Absolutely. Even so, when I got clean and sober, on my 6-month, getting my 6-month coin, I had no family here. I had nothing. So Mo, he said, come on. He says, I'm going to go with you. And so he went and sat in the meeting and watched me get my 6-month coin, and then took me to dinner. Here I was, a guy that had done him wrong, cost him money, and yet he was willing to he drove me to rehab and all the way up to Seattle and talked to me and said, your job's going to be waiting. But then at my 6-month, 3 months later, at my 6-month anniversary, he was beside me there too. So as an employer, if you can get involved, if you can support that person, whether it's going to a meeting with them. I've had guys that have gotten the blue light special. They got to go to meetings for drunk driving. I'll go to a lunch meeting with them, because that will support them in knowing that I don't look down on them. I don't count them as something less than they are. I acknowledge what they're doing. Now, I have that knowledge. I understand what that person's going through. So it's easier for me to say, I'll go sit in a meeting. A guy that's never been to a meeting, never done that, it may be more difficult. However, it speaks volumes if you can do that. So anybody else?
My long silent pause is to get some other dialogue going here.
So, Brian, was it AA or NA that helped you stay sober, or was it something else?
So, great question. So the first thing for me was I was raised in the Catholic Church, so I turned to the Catholic Church for help. And they got me hooked up with a counselor in Catholic Community Services. She helped me get into my first rehab. And then she forced me to go to AA and NA. And I met people. I got kind of involved with that. Now, I stayed in the program for a year. I did my first 90 meetings in 90 days. So that was NA or AA. I preferred AA for me, even though drugs is I don't care about alcohol. I'd rather do the drugs. The camaraderie and the way that the AA meetings work seemed to work better for me. And because I was alcoholic and addict, I felt comfortable going to either. But so those meetings helped. Then I built a personal relationship with God, and that's, in the program they teach us there's a higher power. You have to have something that's greater than you that you rely upon, and for me that's God. And it's been the saving grace in my life, and all the people that surround me. I know that somebody's put those people there. I mean, from the judge that PR'd me when I had 12 failure to appears and the bondsman said we'll no longer bond him, to the chiropractor that got my tools out of pawn so I could go back to work. I mean, I had to make myself vulnerable, explain where I'm at, but those people help me. So it's the program, it's people. And we say, how does the guy on the street get that help? And the first thing is there has to be a bottom that person hits. If we take the bottom away from these people, they're never going to get better, because why get better? I haven't reached a bottom. And in our society today, there's no bottoms.
And I would say the guys we see on the street, the people, they're the bare minimum. They're not the most addicts. Most of them are
correct.
Working.
There's a lot of people that are functioning to some degree.
Yeah. Yep. And
absolutely.
The word program keeps coming up, and it can't be ignored. We run programs. That's the way it is. And we might have different ideas of who wrote the programming, but you're running a program and working. There's a saying that if you don't work a program, your program will work you.
That's life.
Yep.
That's life. You get up, you go to work, you have a program, you have the same things that you do daily, and that's what you depend upon is what you do. Well, when drugs get in the middle of that, it disrupts it, and pretty soon the drugs take over, or the alcohol, and you can't figure out what is the right priorities. And so you've got to get to a point where you can start looking for those priorities and set them straight.
So Brian, I kind of had a similar experience, like with my recovery. I did a lot of like AA and NA.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to a lot of different groups, and I could never really figure it out. But like, I'd always leave the groups actually pretty mad. I felt like, and it's probably not the right way to think, but I felt like I was like sitting in a room full of hypocrites. You know what I mean? And I know it's not the right way to think of it. And a good friend of mine at I guess it was an NA meeting one day. He's like, "Listen, man, this isn't for you. You're looking for something different than this." And I'm like, "Well, what are you talking about?" And he's like, "Listen," he's like, "I know you used to go to this church. You know what I mean?" He's like, "They have a great recovery, meeting on Monday nights." He's like, "I think you should go check it out." And I was like, "I don't know, man. Do I really need another group?" And he's like, "Well, try it anyway." He's like, "You've tried this, and you leave mad every day. So go give it a shot." He's like, "What do you got to lose?" So I went on a Monday night, and, I go walking up to the door, and there's this big biker dude standing there at the door, and I'm like, "Oh, listen, man, I don't know if I'm in the right place or not." And he's like, "You're definitely in the right place." He's like, "Come on in," and I'm like, I didn't even care where I was going at that point, because he made me feel more welcome than I ever felt anywhere else. And from that day on, I just it was pretty easy whenever I get into trouble, or I start thinking stupid things, or I think I'm going to slide backwards like real heavy. Or even at all, I know to just get down on my knees, and ask God to put a roadblock in front of whatever is going to get in my way.
Absolutely. And once I realized that God was there, and there's been prayers. I mean, I was 10 months. I guess it was about 18 months, 20 months sober. And I went to California to get something from my mom's and pick up a vehicle I had down there. And on the way home, I was passing where I used to go buy my syringes. And so my stinking thinking started right there. I could just stop here, get syringes. I got to drive right by C Street in Madera, California, where I used to get my dope. And so I just started praying, God, I can't think like this. This is going to get me in trouble. So I started to recite Ephesians and to myself, put on the whole armor of God. And the next time I thought about it, I was 60 miles from where I originally started thinking about it. So I was 30 miles beyond where I picked up my dope. And it traditionally in the past. And so, that power that you get from prayer is phenomenal. Now, that's not for everybody. There are some people that just can't look at that. They can't fathom that. And that's okay.
Yeah.
What works for you? And being in a meeting where people, for me, when I heard the stuff, the hypocrisies and the guys that come in and go out and come in and go out, I used to just say, thank God that's not me, and look at what do I do that's like them that I better not be doing, so I don't do the same thing they're doing. And so I would use them as a yardstick to what I didn't want to do.
Yeah, and I agree. And it's like I try to tread really lightly when religion's brought in, because it can ruffle feathers really quickly. And it's
Absolutely.
not my intent. But part of the programs are the higher power, and a lot of it is, and I got to be careful how I word this, right? But understand that you're in less control than you really think you are, right? The idea of free will, the true free will, probably doesn't exist, at least the way you think it does. And that once you kind of surrender to that, there's other forces at work with why you do the things you do, but also what could lead to the path of getting better, or whatever that goal is. So sobriety, healthier, whatnot. That is a big first step to take, because in a way it kind of forgives yourself a little bit, because let's just say, for instance, there's a massive amount of articles coming out, journals, about neural pathways being written in a child's brain during the gestation period. So while they're still in the womb, neural pathways are being laid out due to the environment that the mother is in. So she's in a very stressful environment, be it the projects, a war-torn country, whatever scenario. The neural pathways are being written so that the baby's born with a different set of needs for dealing with that environment. So usually that means they need more stimulation to receive the rewards of stimulation, if that makes sense, right? And you can already see how that would lead down a path of some sort of substance abuse or addiction, trying to get the big dopamine rushes, or that same feeling of a big dopamine rush, whether it's an adrenaline junkie, or anything that feeds that.
That's super
Makes
interesting.
sense.
Yeah.
Hey guys, wow, this is great. Very, very heavy, but necessary and needed. Let's get ready to come back and do segment C. My partner, Shopware, how much paper have you touched today? Those are actually piles of time stacked all over the shop. Now think of what you could do with all that time and how many more cars you could get through the door. Cha-ching! It's time for a digital shop management system from Shopware. Go to getshopware.com. Hey guys, in our last segment, I know many of you, all of you had a lot of things to talk about. I know we just can't do a topic like this justice, but trust me, this has been a phenomenal discussion. Let's just, I guess the point is that what can we do to help our industry continue to find, or I'm sorry, to help people inside our own businesses find a pathway to help, or program, like you said, guys. Let's try to nail this one home.
That's kind of a tough one. Yeah, I could just say, just try to be someone's friend. You know what I mean? If they need a friend, it's and try to be an example. I mean, I know for one, like I found out this year, my sister's an alcoholic. She's been hiding it for years, and honestly, like everybody asked me, like, how did you do it? How'd you do it? I'm like, well, you can't really talk to me. I still enjoy a beer or a glass of wine once in a while. I'm like, I'm a bad person to talk to about this, and they're like, yeah, but you're sober for 8 years. I'm like, but I'm not 100% sober right now. I'm not a good influence, like I don't feel that I was a good person to talk to about that. And I explained to my sister, like, you have a hole in your heart right now, and the only thing that's going to fill that is God, and it's, you have a God-shaped hole and you're trying to fill it with something that's not going to fill it at all, and she actually started going to meetings, and to Christian meetings, and she says that helps keep her sober. But I think she still slips up, I think, every once in a while.
David, two tough questions for you. Could you stop drinking? Number one. Number two, do you think it would lead back to the drugs if you don't quit?
No, I don't know. And that's why I know it's a very dangerous game, by me having a beer, or a glass or two of wine. I know it's a very dangerous game, and I'm always one extra beer away from, falling down that hole again, and, I do know it's a reality. And, I know it makes me a complete hypocrite, and it breaks my heart because, I've been through it, and I feel like I can't help my sister, because, who the hell am I, and it breaks my heart.
To help the others, we have to, Dave, I'm sorry that you're going through this. I feel the wheels in your head grinding and thinking, what can I do? So, maybe this is the discussion that's going to help you make that decision. It's not always easy. And for those watching, what Dave's admitting to and what he's trying to express is that, this is a tough deal. And as peers, we want to be able to help. We want to be there to be that person to talk to and to listen. We can't always suggest things. It's just listening and letting the person solve the problem. Mo used to sit and still to this day, when I go to him with a business problem, he sits at his desk and he just takes notes, and he forces me to solve my own problems, and so by articulating what we're feeling and what we're doing, as an owner, you may only have to listen. Just listen. Ask questions. Get the person to see what they need to do themselves, and that helps them help themselves. And for me, I can't tell you the times that I've gone to see him in the last 30 years that now we kind of joke, okay, I'm here to tell you how I'm going to fix this, but just listen to me, but that's how it starts. I realize I got a problem. I realize I can go to him and he's going to help me discover the solution. And all he does is listen, what's that saying? God gave us one mouth and two ears. So maybe listen to what your team is telling you. Maybe it's I need help, and you can find a way to get that conversation to open up without really asking the question.
Thank you for that listening story. I will share a 30-second story on the profound lesson that I had in listening. I was struggling with something. I went to my dad, who typically wasn't a good listener. He was always the person with the answers. And I said, please do me a favor, just sit, just listen. And I said what I had to say to him, and I walked out, and I stroked my head, and I walked out, and he goes, I didn't tell you what to do. I says, I figured it out myself, because I was able to just speak it. And as I was speaking it and putting it in logical order, I solved my own problem.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the power of being a great listener, and especially as we're talking about addiction here. Matt, I have a question for you.
Can I throw something in quick? Just really
please.
quick.
Yeah.
That maybe like specifically for this show and the nature of the trade or profession that we've chosen and that we're involved in, one of the best things you can do is try very hard to at least acknowledge that the vast majority of us have a fixer type personality. That's what we do. That's what we want to do. So you're coming to me with a problem. Even if I should just sit there and listen and tell you, you know what, on this end of the things, it's going to be okay. Whatever that may be. We want to give the answer like, well, why don't you do this? Hey, look, I can pull all this up online. Boom, boom, boom. Here, go to this program. This program's right down the street. Got all these answers for you. And sometimes the best thing to do is just, like Brian said, maybe bite your lip, listen, and restrain judgment if you have any, and then assure them what you can. Like on things on this side are okay, so that I can help you figure this out. And then, you know what? It's their addiction. They have to figure it out. All you can do is try your best to support them without enabling, assuming they're, like active users. And you're not going to be perfect. You're going to go one way or the other often. You just do your best.
Well, I think that, that's a great analogy. We are fixers. And I recognize, my wife comes to me with a problem and I'm trying to fix it. And she says, just listen to me, for God's sakes. And so, I hadn't put that together with when people come, or when I see the situation where maybe I can help, maybe I need to try and listen more. So thanks for that. That's an area maybe I might learn more myself.
Great. Matt always drops these great little, mental word bombs. Every episode I've ever done with him, we have that fixer mentality, or that fixer way about us. Matt, my last question to you and for the show: we've heard incredible stories, honesty, transparency. Do you think what we did here today is going to help someone?
Absolutely. If anything, you have 2 more success stories, and we know there's many more. There's probably going to be hopefully commentary online. One of the Facebook groups maybe will refer to this, and they'll have their own stories, whether it's outright on the page or in private conversations, whatever. That by itself might be enough to push somebody even more to do what they need to do. So yeah, that's 100%. And again, this is such a huge topic. We've again just kind of grazed the surface. The last 2 have really focused on substance abuse, and there's so much more out there for abuse.
Absolutely.
For our attention, how we're getting our rewards, right? That Video games are going to be a big thing when VR starts. VR is pretty good right now. Wait when it gets really good. Ever see Ready Player One? That's a reality. That will happen. And we're already getting lost in our phones. And that's just one. It's a conversation that comes up often, is shops having to take away use of cell phones at the shop. That sucks because it can be a tremendous tool, yet can't stay off whatever that is, text messaging, social media, whatever. So we got all these things abusing our reward system, or helping us to abuse our reward system. And we only touched the scrape the surface. I did want to talk about drama, but it used to be that art imitated life, but right now,
I did some research, some top addictions: opioids, of course, drugs, alcohol, gambling.
Absolutely.
They throw smoking in there. They throw porn in there.
Mm-hmm.
They throw shopping as an addiction.
Yep.
And of course, Matt, the smartphone that you just brought up.
And the other one's drama. There's drama.
Yeah.
It used to be that art imitated life, but right now, with all these avenues of getting media, streaming services, social media, life is starting to imitate art. And you can watch it, especially in younger people. And younger people could be 40-somethings and earlier, reacting to situations in ways especially in the older generation, are kind of like, what is with this? Well, they watched it on TV. That's how they learned how to react.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing right in front of you. And you're like, am I watching some terrible soap opera or what? Well, in a way, you kind of are. You're watching a reenactment live.
Hey, Carm, there was one question. What did we, that when is, Greg Buckley. So for me, what I was able to do early in my sobriety is I realized I needed something that needed me. And so I got, my sister was involved with horses as a kid. So I got involved with horses and I had to take care of them. I had to feed them. I had to make sure that they were taken care of. And then I started after I got my business going, I purchased 20 acres. I started a horse boarding facility on my property, and I geared it towards kids. And I got to invest my time for about 8 years working with kids and horses and sharing my story, teaching kids about, I can remember teaching girls to drive a truck, tow a horse trailer, when they were just learning to drive cars. And so that was rewarding stuff. And so you find something. A lot of these kids came to my facility because of church. They were in the church youth group, and so I had an opportunity to work in that fashion. So that was where some of my energies went.
Wow. Maybe we need to come back, Matt, Brian, David, and talk about addictive behaviors, because I did some research on that. Lying, stealing, manipulating, obsessing, all of those, which are those are things that we should look and observe. And based on all the learning we had in this episode, that are not that don't have an addiction, that own places, that are team players, we need to watch out for this and get our friends somehow.
Could I toss something quick at Greg too? And David and Brian, you maybe want to jump me on this pretty bad. I don't know. So I might be walking into it here. Nothing you will do will ever reward you the way that hit of whatever that drug or whatever that feeling you got from the drugs was. Nothing in life is going to touch it, because it was synthesized to attack that part of your brain. So part of it is kind of accepting that you're not going to get that high anymore, but really trying to relish in and appreciate the little things, that whatever that may be, the good things, to really take time to appreciate those and soak in that as much as you can, because otherwise trying to live up to that same high, you're never going to do it.
Well, for me, it's been 31 years, going on 31 years. So now I've sensed that high getting a colonoscopy. And I'm a colon cancer survivor, so I've had many opportunities to go through that. But the we have to remember what's important, and being in a position or being, we have kidney stones, things like that. I mean, our bodies are subject to this even beyond sobriety. You're not going to totally be immune to it. So what do you do with it? What do you do with it? Do you dwell on it a lot? Or, in the early days, that's where I'd call people for support to hold me accountable. That I will literally ask to be held accountable. If I feel I'm in a bad place, and my friends that I ask to hold me accountable know exactly what I mean. Fortunately, that doesn't happen often anymore.
Hey guys, thank you so much for this heartfelt appreciation for you being here. Brian Holthe, Genesis Automotive and RV in Tacoma, Washington, and the Pierce County ASA chapter president, Matt Fonslow, Riverside Automotive shop manager, diagnostician in Red Wing, Minnesota, who's on vacation, who was so kind to join us on hotel Wi-Fi, we can tell. And David Wagner, one of Philadelphia's most brand new mobile diagnosticians. Thanks, guys, for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.